Space Shuttle Challenger honored us for the manner in which they lived their lives. We will never forget them, nor the last time we saw them this morning, as they prepared for their journey and waved goodbye and slipped the surly bonds of earth to touch the face of God.
Those words were said by Ronald Reagan. They were written by our next guest, Peggy Noonan, who is now a Wall Street journalist columnist, and she has a brand new book out, a compilation of many of her essays, The Time of Our Lives. And in terms of full disclosure, Peggy Noonan, I've had a crush on you for a long time.
I am honored to hear it.
Do you ever get tired of hearing him give that speech?
Oh, my goodness. It's hard to get tired of hearing Ronald Reagan. I thank you for beginning with it. That, in a way, is my beginning point. I begin, actually, this book with a lecture I gave to a bunch of college kids about how when you work in government, they were all going to go into government. When you work in government, you're going to go into work every day and you're going to think it's the same old day. Nothing's happening, nothing's going on. What I do is not important. And then one of these days, something big is going to happen, and you're going to have to bring your best self and your best work to it. And that's how all of us felt in that White House on that painful day.
In the book, The Time of Our Lives, you take many of your columns, reissue the columns, but then sort of give a backstory to each one of them.
Yeah, that's true. I found, I went through like 30 years of work. I had CBS commentaries that I really liked and remembered and put in this book. But I found there was so many varied areas that I thought deserved a chapter. People I miss, for instance. Eulogies and remembrances that I wrote of people like Joan Rivers and Tim Russert and Jackie Onassis. And there's a lot of chapters on controversies, disagreements, great arguments. There's a bunch of mellow moments too, but now and then I just stop the columns and say, I want to tell you about the reaction to this column, or I wrote this essay and I had no idea that it was predictive of certain events that were to come. So in a way, it's a funny thing. It's a book of commentaries and essays and columns, but it also has a few commentaries on the commentaries.
In today, we're not allowed to have friends who are in the media. Republicans are not allowed to like Democrats. You don't care. You're friends with these people regardless of their political affiliations. You just liked them as good people.
Well, that's a great question. I started my career at CBS surrounded by people who had maybe one general point of view, and I went to the Reagan White House where there was another general point of view. I am a conservative, but I'm from a family of Democrats, and to the extent people let me, I try to love everybody, which actually is something I think all of us really try to do, but there are some people on left and right who just don't want to know you unless you're on the team. It's kind of sad, kind of silly, and it's not the way it was when we were kids. Democrats lived next to Republicans, and it didn't even matter who's a Democrat or Republican. You didn't even know, probably,
Peggy Noonan, our guest, The Time of Our Lives. I want to ask you about a column you wrote for the Wall Street Journal in September of 2003, and the title of it is called What I Told the Bishops. And it sounds like you got a lot of grief for that column.
I did get a lot of grief for it. It was 2003. What is that? I can't do math.
Was
that a
12,
dozen years
12
ago?
years ago, yes.
Look, I got together with a bunch of bishops in the Catholic Church, along with a Catholic group, and a bunch of us spoke. And I said, guys, you've got to understand this sex scandal stuff, it is going to kill you. It is going to destroy our church in America. You've got to stop it, and you've got to show the American people you're stopping it. And by the way, there's no real necessity that you all be living in mansions outside of town. You got to go into the poor parts of town and get yourself an apartment. Do you know what I mean? It was very direct. I can promise you they didn't like it.
You say in your commentary about the commentary that one of the most outspoken ones was Bernie Law, the cardinal from Boston.
Oh, my goodness. He sure didn't like it. Look, that guy was at the epicenter of the scandals in the American church. And he that guy barely got out of America without being arrested. You know, they had state troopers carrying subpoenas on his way to his house when he got out. And he went to Rome, Italy, where the church gave him a beautiful posting. And I don't mean to sound bitter, and I don't mean to sound nasty, and I love my church, and I recognize and feel fealty towards its cardinals. But man, to have spent 25 years, as this man essentially did, excusing priests who did terrible things to children, and then instead of throwing them out and taking their collars right off them, he would just reassign them and not tell the new parish what the problem was with this guy. So I now and then, as a columnist, you're writing in real time, and you're bringing your soul and your heart and your brain and your energy to it, and sometimes you let it rip. Well, in that case, I let it rip.
Peggy Noonan, the book is called The Time of Our Lives. Don't ever stop writing, Peggy Noonan.
Oh, thank you so much. You guys are so great.
Peggy,
Thanks.
you got it. Have a good weekend.
You too.
You got it. Peggy Noonan, The Time of Our Lives. I don't know why I said have a good weekend. It's only Wednesday.
Because you're just flustered.
I'm a little rattled.
All kerfuffled.
I'm a little rattled. 6:57, Big 550.